Welcome to Peacock Alley. This is Gary Emmerich with your host, Dale Wetzel. This hour we're discussing things at the University of Mary with the Leadership University. We've had some good discussions as we begin to start looking at what's going on at the Legislature. Dale, you've had a busy day up there, and what do you think? Are we going to survive crossover? Are you going to get there?
Oh, of course. Of course.
Have to.
In terms of what the Legislature did today, the House did a number of things, both defeating bills and approving them, which I think are somewhat notable. And just to have a bit of fun, let's. We talk a lot about property taxes and about any number of things, driving under the influence penalties and things that are very serious. Let's start talking right now about something that I guess, depending on your outlook, is fun. And that is bottle rockets. We're going to talk for a moment about bottle rockets and fireworks. One of the things the House did today was they voted to reverse a ban on the sale of bottle rockets in North Dakota. This ban went into effect in 2009. It was pushed by doctors who treat eye injuries. They came in and said, we have eye injuries from bottle rockets. They shouldn't be allowed to be sold in North Dakota. Although what the legislation did, it does ban the sale of bottle rockets in North Dakota, but it does not ban the possession of bottle rockets or the use of them. So in other words, you can go to a place that sells bottle rockets, or you can maybe even order them over the internet and get your bottle rockets in, and as long as your local city or governing ordinance or whatever doesn't prohibit shooting them off, you can go and shoot them off, and just as you normally would. You just can't buy them locally. And Representative Blair Thorson, he's a Republican from Fargo, he introduced a bill to reverse this ban on sales because he said basically it doesn't make any sense. You can go into South Dakota, buy bottle rockets to your heart's content, and probably buy other fireworks too that you normally would buy in North Dakota on your trip to the fireworks store, and you can bring them back, shoot them off. You can shoot them at each other. One of the things that was discussed quite a bit during the debate on this bill is, whether or not somebody had a history of having bottle rocket fights with their friends or their neighbors. And the prevailing logic that Representative Thorson was trying to promote was, if you can have these things, if you can shoot them, if you can possess them, you should be able to buy them here, just as you can buy other types of fireworks. And the House voted 53 to 37 to lift the ban on sale of bottle rockets. Now that goes to the Senate. And it wasn't, this issue was used to, frankly, talk about deeper political issues and convictions. One of the folks who supported lifting the ban was Representative Rick Becker. He's a new freshman Republican from Bismarck. He said the legislature shouldn't be in the business of preventing people from making bad decisions. And he says if you are going to ban the sale of bottle rockets, what you should do is also ban the sale of power tools to elderly people. You should, and he actually said this, you should ban elderly people from using power tools. You should ban swimming pools. You should ban swimming in the river. You should ban running around outside during a thunderstorm. There's all sorts of hazardous behavior that one can engage in that could result in personal pain or injury or death, besides bottle rockets. And he's saying, okay, if you want to, have the nanny state, let's have it whole hog. He said that this the ban on sale of bottle rockets is just an example of government paternalism run amok. The defenders of the ban said that what is meant to be protected isn't so much the people who buy bottle rockets and shoot them at each other, but folks who are standing around minding their own business, and all of a sudden a bottle rocket comes screaming at them. But that logic did not carry the day, and the bill did pass, and we'll see what the Senate does with it. When the ban
Well, one of the things, Dale, I've thought about the bottle rockets, I've seen these kids shoot their bottle rockets and do that, so I have concerns of that literally as a parent. But there is some merit in this whole nanny state stuff, that there's a point that I appreciate Rick Becker. We had our wine tasting last night at the East 40 for our Great Plains Examiner, and Representative Rick Becker was there. And we had some good discussions specific to the bottle rockets. And, as a father of sons, I kind of thought the ban wasn't all bad, but now that they're kind of growing. But the reality, what you just pointed out, is that you could be an innocent bystander. And when these kids get in these bottle rockets fight, it's kind of dangerous. I would hate to be in the wrong place. It'd be like being in Beirut, I think, because I've been in Lincoln during fireworks, and it's crazy over there. Well,
when I was engaging in bottle rocket wars with my friends, there was no such thing as an innocent bystander. If you're standing around watching a bottle rocket war and you got hit, well, that was your problem. Fortunately, I was not injured. No one else was. But and frankly, I would enjoy doing it again if the right set of circumstances came along. Anyway, other things that happened besides bottle rockets. I don't want to dwell too much on bottle rockets.
But that's a big one, though. That takes a lot of our life up there a little bit. So
there was a bill to spend as much as $6 million for a new governor's residence, up to $3 million of which would be donated privately. That was defeated. There was a proposal to raise speeding fines. Actually, it was approved. This bill doesn't raise speeding fines that much, but what it does do is it gives local governments much more discretion in raising speeding fines, and also fines for such things as running a red light or running a stop sign, moving violations that don't involve speeding. Also, the school zone, the minimum fine for speeding in a school zone is jacked up from $40 to $80. And the House also did something that I thought was a bit surprising, because they usually haven't cottoned to this idea before. They voted 69 to 22 to change the name of the Department of Labor to the Department of Labor and Human Rights. This is something that has been floated before in the legislature and has not been successful, but this margin in the House suggests that this might indeed happen, and so we'll see where that goes.
This evening we are going to be, this is the University of Mary Hour, and we're going to shortly introduce our guest. And Dale, you've been fighting the tough cold, so I appreciate the fact that you're hanging in there pretty good tonight.
Our guest is Mr. Sam Condic. He is the Assistant Professor of Philosophy at the University of Mary, and he's the Director of the Institute for Culture and Public Service at the University of Mary. Welcome, Mr. Condic.
Thank you very much.
And could you please tell us a bit about how you came to the University of Mary? How did you wind up in Bismarck, North Dakota?
Wow. Well, that's quite a tale for telling. I was actually working in Houston. I've done a lot of different jobs, but I was working at a school down in Houston, and I got a call from, or an email actually, from Dr. David Fleischacker, who, for people that know the University of Mary, know that he is the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences.
Go ahead. Keep talking.
Yeah, he's the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and I had actually met him previously about a year prior, about in 2008, and out of the blue I get an email from him, and he says, I'm kind of in a bind. I've got just started here, and my philosopher quit, and it's against the bylaws of the state of North Dakota to operate a university without a philosopher on staff.
Really?
Little known fact, yeah.
I'll be darned. I thought you were joking.
Yeah, no, I'm just. Well, I've introduced this bill many times myself. Yeah, I've advocated for it many times.
It's a philosopher's full employment.
Exactly. Yeah. So, well, yes, we're considering I'm 2/3 of the whole philosophy department right now, sitting before you. Father Dan Maloney is the other third of the department, and we're not allowed to fly on the airplanes at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but. Dr. Fleischacker called me and said, I'm in a bind. My philosophers just quit on me, and I'm wondering if you still need a job. And I said, well, North Dakota is going to be kind of a long commute, but I guess a job comes first. So I flew up in over the summer of 2011 and was offered the job and came up here in the fall and started teaching.
And what were you doing at the time you got this email?
What was I doing at the time? I had finished up my dissertation in 2009, and I was at that time, I was just working at various universities and colleges around in the Houston area. Before that, I had spent about 10 years working in the oil industry. So I had kind of an interesting past, philosopher and working in the oil industry as well. So those two things don't usually go together.
What does what does a background in the philosophical disciplines? How is that helpful in working in the oil industry? Or is it?
Well, it does get you beat up a lot. So that was, it gives you a thick skin. Well, actually, what philosophy really does is maybe the simplest way to say it is that it helps you learn how to think critically, okay, how to see a very, very large picture on something, and being able to see the connections between one thing and another that might not be immediately obvious. And so that comes in very handy, I think, in any kind of employment in the oil business, because things are changing so rapidly, and you have to make decisions so quickly. The tendency is to select for people and hire people that can make a decision, make a decisive decision very, very quickly, which is important. But there's the other side of that, which is being able to look at things and say, okay, if you're going to do this today, what's going to happen 6 months, 9 months down the road?
For want of a better term, did you get looked down upon because you were a philosopher in the oil business?
I don't know if I was looked down upon. I got the squinty eye a lot sometimes. Just what are you doing here? But
what were you good at in the oil industry?
I used to tell my mom I was a professional fast talker.
All right.
We're going to give you that chance today.
Yeah, there. Right. Well, I've lost a step, but I have lost a step. No, I did a variety of things. I started off actually working for consultancies. All these oil companies use very, very large computer systems in their back office for managing all of their accounts payable and accounts receivable. And as difficult as they are to install, they're even more difficult to understand how to use. So what they normally did is they hired liberal arts people like myself in philosophy and other areas to sort of learn the system and then explain it to everybody else. So you talk to the technical person, right? It was kind of like working at the UN. You had these little translator headphones on, and you'd listen to their technical speak, and you'd wait for the translation, and then you'd try to explain it out in English that someone could actually understand. So it's sort of an interpreter, the computer whisperer, maybe, I don't know. But that's how I sort of got my start, and that sort of led me into working with several of the major oil companies, and then also with an oil service company in Houston. And I got to establish a very, very good relationship with many of the people at that oil service company. And so I went to working for them directly, doing a lot of different things. Initially sort of doing some sort of technical support with their computer systems. But then I moved on to doing aftermarket, what they call the aftermarket support. If you go out west, if you go out here in western North Dakota, you'll see all these, what they call Christmas trees, all the valves stacked up on top of the well. And believe it or not, those things actually require a significant amount of service. You've got high pressure flowing through. You sometimes have what they call a sour well, when you have hydrogen sulfide in the oil mixed in with the oil or with the gas, so it corrodes the valves and the surfaces in there. And so periodically they have to be taken apart and repaired and reconditioned. And this is actually a big business. And it's quite a critical business. So what I did is I did marketing support. I was sort of the guy that would go out and assist our people who were in the field, on marketing and doing marketing presentations to their customers and all the kinds of things that we could do for them. So,
what do you think about the expansion of the oil industry in North Dakota? I mean, since you have some expertise in the field, I'm interested in your impression of what's going on in North Dakota.
Oh yeah, it's an exciting time to be in North Dakota. It really, really is. It's an amazing, it brings challenges, definitely, but the oil industry is an exciting and vibrant kind of place to work. There's lots of things going on. If you enjoy sort of a fast pace of life, it's definitely got that. It's very, very hard work. But North Dakotans don't strike me as people that are very afraid of hard work. They seem to take to that. It seems to be sort of the standard here. So I think it's an amazing thing. I think it's an amazing thing for the state. It generates an enormous amount of revenue. It brings in jobs. It creates an environment in which there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of very, very good things to happen. And so I'm excited about all that. It brings risks, and it brings things you definitely have to manage. If you don't, it can come back and bite you. Oil tends to be a very, very fickle kind of industry. It's very, very cyclical. And as fast as they'll put up a drilling rig, they'll tear it back down as soon as the price of oil falls. And, you'll leave in the morning and they're drilling on your property, and you come back home and you wonder what happened, because it's not quite that fast, but it's close. They will pull out very, very quickly.
Where are you from originally, sir?
Originally from Michigan. So, yeah, I grew up in southwestern Michigan, little town called Kalamazoo. There really is a Kalamazoo. That was the slogan when I was growing up there. Yes, there really is a Kalamazoo.
How big is Kalamazoo?
Good question. The whole county, I think, is about 200 and some odd thousand.
Little bitty Kalamazoo. That's you're the biggest county in North Dakota here.
You got me there. Yeah. Well, you know, my whole family was from Chicago, and so I was sort of the oddball. I was the only native Michigander in the whole group, which made for some interesting experiences from time to time. But I was originally from there, and it's a great little place to grow up. One good thing about it is it made me familiar at least a little bit with snow. So when I came up and I saw that strange white stuff falling out of the sky, I wasn't like most Southerners wondering.
Where'd you go to college?
Western Michigan University, actually.
And where is that?
In Kalamazoo.
In Kalamazoo?
In Kalamazoo.
All right. And when you got your email, you're down in Houston, you get an email saying, I need a philosopher.
Right.
What is it how was the job pitched to you? You were going to come up here and teach philosophy, or what? How was it sold to you?
It was actually pretty much just as simple as that. You know, you come here and talk. If you're willing to come up here and talk in front of a bunch of students, we'll give you money. And I said, well, that's what I do. I talk.
Good start.
I talk philosophy to other people, and so they said, so that sounded pretty good. So, actually, well, it was a little more than that. University of Mary, is it's a very, very good place to be. I think, it's a very, very dynamic environment itself. Lots of changes going on, lots of very, very positive things going on there, and they're really building on a very strong and solid tradition that's been there for decades.
Did you have any connections with the university before you got this email?
Not at all, really. It was just kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
How did they know about you?
Well, David, Dr. Fleischacker, and I had met about a year prior when he was working at another institution of all things. And so we had just sort of met and we had established a relationship there before. But it was honestly one of these things, we met, we talked for a while, and then, I said goodbye and I went home and then a year later I get this email just saying, I don't know if you remember me, but and my first thing is, well, of course I don't remember you, but
but he kept your business card. That's good.
He kept my business card. Yeah, that's right. So he and my parole officer knew where I was. It was pretty amazing. Yes.
Had you been to Bismarck before?
I had never been. I've never been. But I tell you, it's a marvelous place. It really is. I'm extraordinarily impressed with the whole region. It's now I've spent so much time in Houston now, in a city with 4.5 million people, which is roughly 7 times the population of the entire state. So when I first drove up, I actually drove up here and I hit, I just drove south of the University of Mary, and I'm thinking, well, I just want to see what's just a little bit further south of Mary. Figure out, just kind of figure the limits of my domain here. And I realized that there was basically a whole lot of nothing south of the University of Mary. And that does quite a number on someone who's lived in a city as big as Houston for so long. But I've been very, very impressed and very pleased with the whole environment here and the people here. It's been a very welcoming, wonderful place to be.
Who are the philosophers who've had the most influence on you?
Well, I do something they call Thomistic philosophy. So, we all come in different flavors. We're kind of like Baskin Robbins. You can get as many flavors of philosophers as you like. But I work principally with somebody called Thomas Aquinas, St. Thomas Aquinas, who was actually a 13th century theologian. But he did a lot of philosophy along the way, which is kind of an interesting thing. It's sort of it's a way of doing theology, is you do philosophy first. And so I spend most of my time, I tell my students it's kind of ironic that as a philosopher I spend most of my time reading a book on theology, because most of his works are on theology. But he in turn was also influenced by Aristotle. So you get a marvelous, and also Islamic philosophers as well, lesser known in the West, but several very, very prominent Islamic philosophers of the 10th through the 13th centuries. And so I really kind of do Aquinas, and then I do Aristotle, and then I kind of get a little bit of smattering of Islamic philosophy in there every once in a while for good measure.
Could you tell us a bit about St. Thomas's beliefs? What are his core beliefs?
Well, he's obviously a Catholic theologian and lived and wrote around in the 13th century. So this was an era, actually, of, believe it or not, this was sort of the happening age in the time to be a scholar, because you had this great introduction of new learning coming into Europe from the East. Islamic philosophy was coming in. Aristotle was being reintroduced. And what you had is you had this mix of Catholic theology with this pagan Greek philosopher and these great Islamic philosophers all working. And so what the hallmark really of Aquinas' work is that he takes these three very, very diverse threads, and he just knits them all together seamlessly. He takes the church fathers, people like St. Augustine, and the entire history of the theological history of the Christian church, and he melds it seamlessly with this Islamic philosophy that he inherits along with the philosophy of Aristotle. So he's a great integrator, and he's a marvelous person to follow, I think, for anybody who's interested in learning, because he's willing to accept anything that comes his way that he can find truth in.
In the second half of our show, we're going to be discussing the Institute for Culture and Public Service, of which you are the director. Could you just give us a thumbnail sketch of what the Institute's about?
Yeah, so the Institute is a collaborative effort between us over at the University of Mary, but along with our partner institutions, the United Tribes Technical College and Bismarck State College. And this really was sort of something that's been cooking for a long, long time, but it's really kind of finally came together this year under the direction of Monsignor Shea and Dr. Scogan, Larry Scogan, and Dr. Dave Gipp over at United Tribes. So, Dr. Scogan, of course, at Bismarck State. And the idea really is that in light of all the changes that are occurring in North Dakota, you know, the pace of change here is accelerated tremendously. What the Institute is an attempt to do is sort of collaborate together to see how we can coordinate our different programs in such a way that we can get more out of what we do. You know, each of these institutions has its own distinct mission. We serve, in some cases, distinct populations, but we all have a common thread that we're all here to serve the people of North Dakota and to make North Dakota the best place we can possibly make it. And so really what we're trying to do is figure out how we can pull the various resources together to make that happen more quickly.
We'll be speaking about this subject at length in our next half hour. We've been speaking to Professor Sam Condic. He's an assistant professor of philosophy at the University of Mary and the director of the University of Mary's Institute for Culture and Public Service. The University of Mary is the sponsor of this hour on Wednesday night on the Legislature today, and we will be back shortly to discuss the Institute for Culture and Public Service.
Welcome back to Peacock Alley. This is Gary Emineth, your host, Dale Wetzel. We're broadcasting the Legislature today. This is the University of Mary Hour. The Legislature's been on the mind of some of the folks at University of Mary and kind of thinking about developing tomorrow's leaders. So we're excited to be a part of this. So, Dale, I'll turn it over and let you continue your discussion with Dr. Sam Condic.
We're speaking with Professor Sam Condic. He's the assistant professor of philosophy at the University of Mary and director of the Institute for Culture and Public Service, which is a collaborative effort of the University of Mary, United Tribes Technical College, and Bismarck State College. Professor Condic, can you tell us how this came together?
The whole institute?
Yes.
It's we were. I think I said a little bit earlier is that it was really sort of something that's been kind of cooking for many, many years. You know, there's been a recognition among many people here in the capital city for a need to pool the resources as much as we possibly could to meet the challenges that were coming along within North Dakota. As people that live here in Bismarck know, Bismarck actually has been growing pre-oil, and so there were changes already in the wind. And so I think there was a general sense that we needed to be proactive about managing that change.
And how are you addressing the challenges that you mentioned?
Yeah, so really kind of what we did is we sat down and we started asking ourselves some core questions. What are some of the major questions that are facing the area? And these discussions were happening, of course, after the oil boom out west. And we were able to narrow it down to four kind of basic issues. One, how do you diversify your economic growth? Right, we have 180 some odd rigs running out west. This makes the economy, both in the state and locally, very dependent upon oil, which, as I said before, is a very cyclical kind of business. So how do you diversify your economy so that way you can ride the highs and the lows of the oil industry without taking it in the neck? The second thing was, how do you lead from a global perspective? If you're in the oil business, you're in a global business. You're exposed to the whim and whimsy of the global economy, and that really works both ways, right? You have to watch the global economy and global demand for oil and what's happening in the Middle East and the Far East with an eagle eye. At the same time, they're watching you. You know, just the other day we had our kickoff event with the Bismarck Mandan Development Association. And I threw out a little factoid there about the Wall Street Journal. I said I went and I dug through the Wall Street Journal archives and asked how many times was North Dakota, the state, mentioned in the Wall Street Journal from 1985 until 2012. And between 1985 and 2009, the state of North Dakota was mentioned a grand total of 28 times. So 25 years, 28 times. And in 10 of those years, we weren't mentioned at all, right? So we were just the late, great Eric Severide referred to, who's a native son here, as everyone knows, referred to North Dakota once as the large rectangular blank spot in the nation's consciousness, right?
This fighting words.
Yeah, well,
it's true for a lot of people.
Well, it's true. And Eric himself said this, right? But that's not true. I guess the point is this is certainly not true anymore.
Exactly.
Because since 2009, let's see.
Instead, it's a rectangular black spot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And at night, it's a glowing flame.
Glowing natural gas flare.
Oh yeah, you can see it from the sky. It's impressive. So in 2010, we were mentioned 24 times. So we went from 28 times in the last 25 years to now 24 times in 2010, 53 times in 2011, and 112 times in 2012.
Wow.
So we are definitely on everyone's mind. And this brings up the question of how do you lead from a global perspective? If you're in the Wall Street Journal twice a week, people are paying attention to what's going on here. They're watching you. They're interested in what's going on. How do you respond to that successfully? The third thing that we wanted to focus on, the third question we asked is, well, look, how do you increase the intellectual capital within the state, right? You have a growing population. You have growing needs. We've got marvelous, marvelous people within the state, within the city. We just need more of them. So how do we go out and we get more leaders? How do we get more people that can drive this change, get in front of the change, manage the change, help the whole community grow? How do we do that? How do we increase the intellectual capital available here in the state and within Bismarck? And then the last question we asked was, how do we enrich the diverse and unique North Dakota culture? North Dakota genuinely is unique, and I do mean that in a very, very good way. You know, there's a marvelous community here. How do we preserve that? Things are definitely going to change. But how do we preserve that? How do we carry forward all of the good things we find in North Dakota now? How do we carry those things forward as things change? And they will. So these were basically the four questions that came up regarding life here in North Dakota. And in response, the Institute has organized itself around four major areas of work. Okay? First thing we said is, well, look, we need to start working on some academic programming. We've got three very, very good colleges here. How can we collaborate together, organize our academic work? We're actually, after all, academic institutions first and foremost. How do we coordinate our academic work so that way we can deliver more value to the people here in North Dakota? And so one of the things we're going to take a look at is every opportunity we have to organize our curriculum, collaborate in our curriculum so that way we can make it easier for students to move, say, from United Tribes and get an associate's degree and then pass all the way through the University of Marion and get a bachelor's if that's what they choose to do. Let's figure out ways to make that happen seamlessly so that there's no issues, no concerns, right? Every opportunity we can to make it easier for students to get a higher education, we want to be able to do that. The second thing we focused on was leadership development, okay? We've got a whole lot of very creative and talented people here, right, that want to assume leadership roles, but that can be very, very difficult. You just don't jump into the Senate or the House of Representatives. You don't become a member of a board of directors for a nonprofit successfully without some assistance. So how can we help people that want to enter into a leadership role here in the state? How can we help them do that? And so we're going to be looking at internship programs, other sorts of collaborative efforts with other nonprofits within the state. How can we take some of our students and provide those students and move those students through and give them the opportunities that they want and we need them to take as a state?
One of the things I would add to that, Dr. Condic, is when we met with Monsignor Shea and the staff up at the University of Mary, we were very excited over the vision and leadership that he talked about the role University of Mary might play in the capital city with development of the students, but even in the community, permeating the culture, whether it's the Benedictine culture, but just the whole servant leadership, which is missing in our culture today. And it was really exciting just to hear the role and the vision he had for that, and hear it coming from yourself and kind of what you guys are all as leadership at the university, which then permeates our city. It is great.
I'd be interested in knowing specifically how does one engage in leadership development? What sort of means are there to achieve that end?
Yeah, well, it's a very subtle process. I mean, no, leadership development. There's a couple of things you can do. One thing that immediately comes to mind is the types of classes that you can provide people with, right? You try to give them a very, very broad-minded civic kind of approach to things, right? To my mind, that includes an exposure to many of the great classical works and things like this. People have thought about our problems before, believe it or not. We're not the first ones to come across a culture of growth. We're not the first ones that have had to face change. Let's take a look at what the other intelligent, smart people in the world have thought about this, right? So this is the first thing. You can definitely do something on the academic side. But there's also just the practical side to this, the nuts and bolts of how do you go about running a nonprofit? How do you go about being a servant leader? How do you go about, say, serving in the legislature or serving in government, serving at the level of your town council? How do you do these sorts of things? And I think the way you handle that very practical concern is you put them in a position where they can help somebody who's already doing it. Right, that's the best way to learn something practical, is that you actually participate in the activity, you observe the experts in the field doing it. So we're actively working and seeking out partnerships with people that can help us do just that. We want to be able to provide a conduit for our students from all three colleges, provide them the conduit to let them move into really all areas. I've been focusing on nonprofits and government, but this would also be industry as well. Industry needs leaders every bit as much as governments do, every bit as much as nonprofits do. How can we provide conduits for people to go into industry and get exposed to how you run an organization, how do you do it effectively, and then bring that education that the three colleges are providing them, right, and actually get a chance to practice it, put it into practice, and then take what they learn in their internship, take that away, and return to the school and enrich their education. So when they're finally graduating, they come with a sense of comfort.
Who are you working with at this point?
We've been talking to several people, but nothing has actually been firmed up at the point where we could actually make an announcement on this. But we definitely want to create partnerships within the community and really across the state. To provide opportunities for all of our students.
I was just thinking about, Dale, just the whole pages and the people involved in the young bill book clerks, which is different than it was when I did it manually.
In the legislature.
But at the legislature, when you think of kind of shadowing some legislator in the committees, I wonder if there ought to be, just a collaborative discussion, reaching out to some of the leadership out there in the House and the Senate. And, obviously, once you move outside the legislative session, you got state government here. So you got governor's office and you got Department of Commerce, and the list goes on, whether it's Health and Human Services, that there's a place for these students to, you have internships, I guess, where you got students teaching, right? So, and they do it in the hospital. Is that being done in state government alongside of, state servants, if you will, or people working in state government or legislative elected officials? I think that's kind of an interesting angle. And maybe you're already in process of doing that, but I think that's a great time right now with leadership in play to do that.
Absolutely. Anything we can do to help our students, assume those leadership roles, and to learn how they're doing it from the people that are doing it so well right now would be
the people
absolutely.
that you've approached so far. How receptive have they been to this message?
They've been positive. I think everybody recognizes that there is this need for leadership development at all levels and across all spectrums. Understanding that leadership development requires these kinds of opportunities, but it also requires people that are coming with a general background, dare I say even a philosophical background in some cases, but also a technical background. And so, there've been we've had so far a very positive response to our message. How
do you try to integrate the concept that you mentioned of servant leadership into this whole equation?
Well, this has been a point of emphasis for the University of Mary for many, many years now, the whole concept of the servant leader, which is, to my mind, what that means is someone who doesn't act to serve themselves, but acts to serve the needs of others. And that this sort of, when you think of your life's work in that way, it takes on sort of a more solemn and a more serious tone to it. It still can be fun, and it can still be something you do with enthusiasm and energy. But it becomes something that you realize that you're touching other people and you're influencing other people and you're affecting other people's lives. And so if you're in that sort of leadership position, you have to recognize that this is what you're doing.
Do your partners, United Tribes Technical College and Bismarck State College, how do they integrate that ethos into their own cultures?
Oh, yeah. I think the whole notion of leadership and in their own ways, servant leadership. They might not say that explicitly, but I think you can see that in all of the people that you meet at both of those places. The people that are working at both of those institutions definitely have the notion of, we're here to serve the people of North Dakota, and that's our reason for existence. And so it really melds quite nicely with what UMary is doing. On that point, I think we wholeheartedly agree. We're in perfect concert.
In 5 years, where do you hope to be in terms of the progress of developing leaders?
Oh, well, we think mostly what we want to do is respond to the needs that are in the community. So I think what we need to do is in 5 years take a look at where our community is and look at the needs of the community. One of the nice things about the Institute is that its organization is very, very broad, and that's by design. So this way we can adapt as we go forward. If we're doing one thing today and that's what the state needs, then fine, we'll do that. If we find 5 years from now that the state needs something else, then we can turn and do that as well. So
I was just wondering, what are your metrics for success? Is it having so many interns, so many people elected to the city council?
Yeah. Global domination is the ultimate goal, of course,
for
every organization, right? Yes. The need for global domination. But honestly, we just launched on Monday, and so our thought processes on that are not complete. But thank you for giving my three bosses the idea that I need metrics now, so to be measured against. So I appreciate that, Dale. It's from the heart, really.
Okay. I mean, I didn't know whether you had metrics at this point or not.
At this point, no. Okay. I mean, we're still trying to just figure out how we're actually gonna pull this off. There's a lot of enthusiasm within the whole community. All three presidents, you should have heard them speak Monday. They were really, really you could just tell there was genuine enthusiasm and a genuine desire to collaborate and work together. It was really a very, very marvelous and special thing to do. So we've got a lot of energy and we've got a lot of focus, but we're still in the process of trying to lay out exactly what the next steps are.
Do you have any sense at this point how many students want to be leaders?
Well, it's interesting because part of the reason for the Institute kind of coming to be when it did was in response to a student query to Father Shea himself, right? Back when he was a mere father. Instead of a Monsignor now, yeah.
Who knows?
He
may be the next Pope.
Yeah, this is true. Coincidence? It's...
you wouldn't have to worry about him resigning after 5 years or however long.
I'm going to have to, it's funny now that he's Monsignor and I keep calling him Father, I'm going to have to put, like some people have a cuss jar on their desk, I'm going to have to put the Father jar on my desk every time I call him Father instead of Monsignor, right? Take a trip to Bermuda by the end of the semester.
Okay.
So a student actually approached, the story that I was told was that a student actually at the University of Mary approached the Monsignor and said, look, here we are in the capital city, and I'm interested in service. I'm interested in public life and service, and yet we don't have any way for me to do that here. How can I get... And so you think about the courage of the student to be able to approach the president of the university on a plane and say, hey, I want this. How can I go about doing this? And this sort of got him thinking about it all again. And he kept thinking, well, we've been in discussions with the United Tribes and BSC, and let's see if we can't pull something together. So I think in some ways it's kind of a marvelous thing that's actually being a student-driven kind of thing.
Do we have any indication of how many students are interested in
how many students programs? Are going to be in this? We have a 2+2 program, what we call a 2+2 program agreement in place with Bismarck State College at the moment for a degree in political philosophy and public policy. So it's sort of it's a combination of political philosophy and public policy, and we have. This was started up last year, and I think we have 3 or 4 students already involved in it. How many more students will get into that particular degree, we're going to have to see. We want to put in other appropriate kinds of 2+2 agreements in with United Tribes as well to see if we can't, work with their students as well.
A student of political philosophy and public policy in this context, what books are they reading? What disciplines are they trying to become familiar with? Right.
Yeah. So the whole idea behind this degree is that it's trying to meet both the practical and the speculative needs. Right. You've got the nuts and bolts sort of things of understanding forms of government, how government is supposed to work, what are the checks and balances that should be in place in a government, and for that sort of thing, you're going to read a lot of political theory. You're going to read everything from constitutional law and the Constitution itself, along with political commentators, people that write in the arena of political theory. People like John Rawls is a very, very big name, at least a very, very influential figure. Whether you agree with him or not, he's a very influential figure. And you'd look at people like that. And the idea there, the focus here is, okay, if you have to govern a pluralistic people with different, diverse backgrounds, how do you go about doing it? Okay, and that's sort of the political theory side of it, the political science side. The political philosophy side, you're going to be looking at the much more theoretical kinds of things. You're going to be looking at, Plato. Plato writes probably the single most important political philosophy book, The Republic, yep. Right? We've been reading that now for 2,400 years. And I bet you will keep reading that for forever. And then you read people like Aristotle, who also writes extensively on this. Aquinas himself writes on this. And then there's a whole slew of people that work in what's called the natural law theory of political philosophy, taking the work of Aquinas and kind of extending it into the 21st century. And so if you're working in this sort of degree, these are the kinds of things you're going to be looking at. So it's trying to satisfy, I don't know, maybe the left brain, right brain kind of thing. I don't know if you can divide it up like that. But, the practical side of you, we're going to teach you how to actually go about and function within a government. And the other side, we're going to try to teach you about what are the principles and thoughts that are behind it. What do the great minds think about it?
One of the things that I had in mind was, okay, let's say I'm a student. I'm really interested in this program. I'm interested in serving in public office. I'm interested in running for elective office. Yeah. And to what extent is this program going to offer practical instruction or advice on how to build a political power base, how to run for office, how to get an endorsement?
Right. The academic side of this sort of work that's not something we would address directly in the academic side, but it's certainly something that we would try to do through the internship programs that the Institute wants to run, right? You're interested in doing this. Okay, let's get you shadowing a representative, shadowing a senator. Let's get you working with one of the various departments here that's running out of the Capitol. So that way you can actually see how it's done and start at the very practical level, making your connections, making your network. But at the other side, seeing how you do it and how you do it well and how you do it with nobility, and doing it in a way that's truly serving the people rather than serving yourself.
And how have you been doing your job since you got in? I mean, this sounds like it's a work in progress. And how is it that you're trying to shape what your job is?
At this point, I'm really kind of in a position where, since everything's so new and it's moving so fast, I'm kind of in response mode. I simply, I had earlier today. I actually, had lunch meetings with various people that wanted to talk to me and kind of inform me on some of the things that they were doing. So my role right now is extremely fluid. I sort of see myself at this level of really just trying to take in as much as I can and then trying to organize it in response to what people are saying they need.
And what are they saying that they need at this point?
There's definitely a need for, leadership. There's definitely a need for bringing in really kind of two groups of people. There's you can kind of divide it up into two groups. One is people to say that are college age, that are in their starting college let's say finishing college. 21, 22, 23. How do we provide a path for them? How do we provide a path through college and into some sort of service kind of life, whether it's serving on a nonprofit board, running for public office, running for mayor, working in the government in some sort of capacity, doing something in the realm of public service. That's one group that we can quite directly address through academic programming, through our internship programs. But then there's a second group, which is trying to address a more immediate need. Say that you're in one of these smaller towns out in western North Dakota that's just booming, right? Well, there's a tremendous need for new leadership out there. So then how do you take the people that are there, who've never really maybe thought of themselves as leaders, who've never really thought of taking on to a leadership position, how do we encourage them, first of all, to take on that responsibility within their local community? And how do you provide them with the resources and the support that you need to be able to do that? And that's a very, very different thing. With a 22-year-old kid in college, you pretty much own their day and their night, right? If you've got somebody who's in their 30s and has a job and wife and children, okay, you've got to try to figure out how you work around all of that in a successful sort of way.
So this is open to non-traditional students, older students.
Well, yeah, the Institute, we would, we certainly welcome all of that, right? We certainly want to find ways to serve absolutely anybody that's coming along that has need.
Okay, if you're let's say you have Gary Ameneth and he shows up
right.
and he wants some training in leadership, and he's already a businessman. He's been the chairman of the Republican Party. What do you tell him? How do you deal with people who might have experience with leadership already?
Right.
And how would you handle that sort of student?
Yeah. Our programs aren't to the point where I could lay out a career path for. This is all assuming, right, that he passes his background check, right?
Yeah, that's true. He might have a tough time doing
may
that.
Not happen.
Yeah, but no, we're not. Our programs aren't along that way. But you know what? All of the 3 colleges that participate already recognize the needs of non-traditional students already. So we do have a model that we can follow on that score, right? We have night classes, we have online classes, we have other sorts of things. Maybe the best path for someone like Gary might be the other area that we're trying to work on, which is community outreach, right? That's the 4th thing that the Institute is trying to work on, is community outreach. Maybe the best way to handle, to help Gary is through that kind of program, right? Maybe it's a certification program. Maybe it's something like that.
We've been speaking to Dr. Sam Condic. He's an assistant professor of philosophy at the University of Mary and director of the Institute for Culture and Public Service, which is a cooperative effort between the University of Mary, United Tribes Technical College, and Bismarck State College. Thank you, sir.